1:17 a.m. The Persian Gulf. Day 4 of Operation Epic Fury. The water between Bandar Abbas and the Keshem Island Channel is 12 meters deep in places and warm enough at the surface that the thermal differential between the sea and the night air is almost zero. On a thermal imaging display, the Gulf at this hour looks like a flat gray sheet with no contrast, no edges, no distinction between the water that supports a hull and the water that does not. It is, by every measure, ideal operating territory for small, fast vessels that do not want to be seen. The IRGC Navy has known this for 30 years. They built their entire doctrine around it. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Naval Force is not structured like a conventional navy. It does not operate aircraft carriers or cruisers or destroyers in the Western sense. What it operates is mass. Hundreds of fast attack craft, missile boats, and patrol vessels distributed across a network of coastal bases, hidden pens carved into the rocky shoreline, and improvised forward operating points that can be established and abandoned in hours. The doctrine is called swarm tactics. The theory is that enough small, fast, cheap vessels attacking simultaneously from multiple vectors will overwhelm the point defense systems of a larger, more capable opponent through sheer volume. In every war game the IRGC conducted in the decade before 2026, the swarm worked. In those war games, the opponent did not have what the USS Gerald R strike group is carrying tonight. The strike group's intelligence cell had been tracking IRGC vessel movements since 11 p.m. The picture that assembled itself on the CIC displays over 3 hours was not ambiguous. 14 IRGC fast attack craft had sortied from the Bandar Abbas main base between 9:30 p.m. and 11 p.m. in groups of 2 and 3. Moving without navigation lights on headings that converged at a point approximately 40 nautical miles southwest of the Ford's current position. 9 more vessels had departed from the Keshem Island facility. 2 of the larger Peykaap-class missile boats had left the Jask base on the Gulf of Oman side of the strait, heading west at high speed. The pattern was unambiguous to anyone who had spent time studying IRGC operational doctrine. This was a coordinated multi-axis approach. The swarm was forming. The intelligence officer who built the movement picture over those 3 hours had been at her console since 9 p.m. The contacts appeared one at a time, each sortie individually small enough to represent a routine patrol. The Bandar Abbas base regularly put boats out at night. The Keshem facility did the same. It was only when she mapped all the departure headings on a single chart and drew the vectors forward in time that the convergence geometry became visible. She reported her assessment at 12:15 a.m., not with the certainty of confirmed intelligence, but with the precision of a probability assessment. 78% likelihood of coordinated attack, time on target window between 1:45 a.m. and 2:15 a.m., axis of approach multi-vector from north and northeast. The number she wrote in her log was 78%. She has thought about that number in the months since. She was right about the vectors. She was right about the timing. The only thing she underestimated was the missile boats she did not initially identify as part of the operation, because they departed from Jask at a time offset that did not initially fit her pattern. She found them at 12:41 a.m., 34 minutes after her initial report, when their headings had developed sufficiently to betray their intent. She updated her assessment immediately. Her reporting chain had 36 minutes of additional warning before the engagement began. Those 36 minutes mattered. The strike group commander used them to pre-position the Seahawks, allocate the surface warfare engagement zones, brief the weapons teams, and run a compressed tabletop review of the C-802 threat profile with the tactical action officer. 36 minutes is not long, but it is the difference between a force that is reacting to events and a force that is shaping them. The tactical action officer presented his assessment to the strike group commander at 12:47 a.m. The assessment was 7 sentences long. The last sentence was the important one. At current approach, rates and headings, the lead elements of the Iranian formation would be within anti-ship missile range of the ford at approximately 2 a.m. The strike group commander looked at the plot for 45 seconds. He asked one question: what is the status of the MH-60R ready deck? 4 MH-60R Seahawk helicopters were on deck, armed, crews strapped in, at combat, search and rescue plus configuration. He told the tactical action officer to launch them now, before the formation closed further, and to begin allocating surface warfare engagement solutions across the screen. The strike group commander had been in this Navy for 26 years. He had studied the 1988 Operation Praying Mantis, the last time the United States Navy engaged the Iranian Navy in open combat. In one afternoon in April 1988, the U.S. Navy sank or disabled half of Iran's operational fleet. He understood what was coming tonight would be measured against that afternoon. He intended the comparison to be favorable. At 1:17 a.m., the 4 MH-60R Seahawks lift off the ford's deck in pairs, running lights off, climbing to low operational altitude, and turning toward the Iranian formation. Each helicopter carries 8 AGM-114 Hellfire missiles and a door gun. Each crew consists of a pilot, a co-pilot, and a sensor operator who manages the AN/APS-153 multimode radar and the forward-looking infrared turret. In the thermal imaging display, the Iranian fast attack craft are vivid white shapes against the dark gray of the Gulf, their engine heat signatures marking them as clearly as flares. The sensor operators in the 4 Seahawks are looking at 23 confirmed contacts spread across a front of approximately 18 nautical miles, all of them moving toward the strike group. The Seahawk flight commander, riding in the lead aircraft at 800 feet and 3 nautical miles from the lead Iranian element, runs his engagement calculus. The Hellfire missile has a range of approximately 8 kilometers in its surface attack mode. The Iranian fast attack craft are currently at 12 kilometers. He has 4 minutes before they enter effective Hellfire range. He uses those 4 minutes to distribute targeting assignments across the 4 helicopters by data link, each aircraft assigned to a sector of the approaching formation, each sector containing between 5 and 7 contacts. The assignments are overlapping, so that if one helicopter expends its missiles on its sector before completing coverage, the adjacent aircraft can cross-assign. Redundancy is not inefficiency. Redundancy is the difference between a successful engagement and a partial one. At 1:21 a.m., the lead Iranian elements enter Hellfire range. The first missile fires from the lead Seahawk at 1:21 a.m. and 14 seconds. The Hellfire's rocket motor ignites in a flash of infrared that the sensor operator's display renders as a white streak departing the left side of the frame. The missile guides on the laser spot designation that the sensor operator holds on the lead Iranian fast attack craft's engine compartment. Impact at 1:21 a.m. and 22 seconds. The thermal display shows the fast attack craft's engine heat signature expand suddenly into a much larger bloom, then fragment into multiple smaller signatures as the hull breaks up. The sensor operator marks the contact as disabled and slews the turret to the next assigned target. On the Iranian fast attack craft operating 600 meters behind the lead vessel, the crew has just watched their lead boat disappear from the radar display and observed a flash on the water ahead of them. Their commanding officer makes the only decision that doctrine permits. He calls the engagement into his radio network and accelerates to maximum speed, turning toward the origin of the missile fire. The IRGC training for this scenario is explicit. If the lead element is engaged, the remaining elements close the range as fast as possible because the missile systems engaging them have a minimum engagement range below which they become less effective. The Iranian crew knows this. What they do not fully appreciate is how many missiles the 4 Seahawks carry collectively, and at what rate those missiles can be delivered against targets that their own radar systems cannot even detect until the engagement is already 30 seconds old. The engagement proceeds at a pace that has no precedent in Iranian naval planning. All 4 Seahawks are firing within 40 seconds of the first missile launch. The data link picture in each cockpit shows contacts disappearing from the display in clusters, the Iranian formation that was converging on the strike group from multiple angles being methodically reduced by aircraft operating at a range and with a precision that the IRGC's surface vessels cannot effectively counter. The fast attack craft carry rocket pods and heavy machine guns effective against targets within a kilometer. The Seahawks are engaging at 8 kilometers. The physics of this engagement are not in the IRGC's favor. Their doctrine assumed they would reach minimum gun range before being engaged at scale. They are being engaged from beyond the horizon of their own weapons, by aircraft they cannot see and cannot target with anything they carry. The IRGC squadron commander, aboard one of the Peykaap-based craft in the northern element, attempts to execute the contingency maneuver his training prescribes. A hard turn to put the radar signature side of the hull toward the attacking platform to reduce the fire control solution quality. The maneuver assumes a radar-guided weapon. The Hellfire, in its laser-guided mode, does not care about radar cross-section. The sensor operator tracking him holds the laser spot on the hull regardless of the aspect angle, and the missile follows the laser to the spot. The contingency maneuver accomplishes nothing except changing which side of the hull takes the impact. The contact disappears from the display at 1:24 a.m. But the IRGC commanders monitoring the engagement from the Bandar Abbas Operations Center are not watching passively. At 1:26 a.m., the 2 Peykaap-class missile boats that had sortied from JASC reach their firing position and launch 4 C-802 anti-ship missiles. The C-802 is a subsonic sea-skimming cruise missile with a range of 120 kilometers and a 165-kilogram warhead. It flies at approximately 20 meters above the water surface, below the horizon of most ship-based radar at extended range. The Iranian missile crews have been waiting for exactly this moment. While the Seahawks and the strike group's attention is focused on the fast attack craft swarm to the north, the missile boats approach from the southeast and fire from outside the engagement zone. 4 missiles. Sea-skimming. Inbound from bearing 127 degrees. The AN/SPY-6 radar on the Ford detects the C-802 launches at 1:26 a.m. and 18 seconds. The missiles are classified and tracked within 1.2 seconds of first detection. The Tactical Action Officer has 4 incoming cruise missiles and approximately 3 minutes and 40 seconds before the lead missile reaches the Ford's position. He has SM-6 interceptors in the Mark 41 cells and ESSM Block 2 missiles in the magazine. He also has the Phalanx CIWS as the final layer. He begins the engagement sequence. The first 2 SM-6 missiles launch at 1:27 a.m. They climb to altitude to gain the radar geometry needed to look down at the sea-skimming C-802s, then dive toward the missile intercept points. The engagement geometry for sea-skimming missiles is always complicated by the radar horizon problem. A missile flying at 20 meters above the water is below the radar horizon until it is relatively close, which compresses the engagement timeline for mid-course intercepts. The SM-6's ability to receive targeting data from off-board sensors, including the E-2D Hawkeye orbiting overhead, partially solves this problem by extending the effective radar horizon of the engagement system. The Hawkeye can see the C-802s from altitude when the ship's own radar cannot. The first SM-6 intercepts the lead C-802 at 1:28 a.m. and 55 seconds, at a range of 38 nautical miles from the Ford. The detonation is visible on the thermal cameras as a brief, intense flash at sea level. The second C-802 is engaged by the second SM-6. Miss. The SM-6's guidance solution was within lethal radius, but the C-802's terminal phase maneuvering caused the intercept geometry to fail by approximately 4 meters. The third C-802 is engaged by an ESSM Block 2 from the Ford's closer-in magazine, fired at a range of 12 nautical miles. hit. The fourth C-802 is now 11 nautical miles out and closing at approximately 280 meters per second. The ESSM engagement window has closed. The Phalanx CIWS on the Ford's starboard side acquires the contact at 1:29 a.m. and 41 seconds. The 20mm Vulcan cannon begins tracking. At a range of 1.4 kilometers, the system opens fire. The C-802 enters the stream of 20mm tungsten rounds at a closing velocity that gives the Phalanx system approximately 2 seconds of engagement time. The rounds impact the missile's airframe. The warhead does not achieve complete detonation, but the impact and the partial energy release of the damaged warhead section create a debris pattern that strikes the Ford's hull above the waterline at 1:29 a.m. and 49 seconds. The impact is felt through the entire ship as a sharp vibration followed by a secondary shudder. 2 sailors in a passageway near the strike point are thrown against the bulkhead by the pressure wave. Neither sustains injuries requiring medical evacuation, but both report to the medical bay for assessment. The damage to the Ford's hull is assessed by the damage control teams at 1:47 a.m. A 2-meter gash in the outer hull plating above the waterline. No penetration to the inner hull. No flooding. No effect on combat systems. The ship is fully operational. But the Ford has been struck. That fact will be in every after-action report and every strategic communication for the next week. In the CIC, the Tactical Action Officer notes the hull impact with 4 words in the engagement log. C-802 partial intercept, hull strike. He does not stop. There are still 7 Iranian fast attack craft contacts showing on the display that have not been engaged. He routes 2 of the Seahawks to the southeast to deal with the Peykaap missile boats before they can reload and fire again. At 1:33 a.m., the lead Seahawk engages the first Peykaap-class missile boat with 4 Hellfire missiles. The Peykaap is larger than the fast attack craft and presents a more substantial thermal signature. 3 of the 4 Hellfires impact. The second Peykaap, observing the engagement on its bridge radar, turns hard south and begins aggressing at maximum speed toward Iranian waters south of Larak Island. The Seahawk commander tracks it for 40 seconds, assesses the threat as retreating rather than maneuvering to reload, and turns back to the northern engagement. At 1:38 a.m., the last confirmed Iranian fast attack craft contact in the primary engagement zone shows on the display as stationary and without engine heat, consistent with a vessel that has lost propulsion and is dead in the water. The Seahawk assigned to the northern sector flies over the contact at low altitude. The sensor operator's thermal display shows the outline of a fast attack craft, its engine signature gone, its hull cooling against the water temperature. No crew visible on deck. The contact is logged as disabled. The Seahawk flight commander calls the all-clear to the Ford CIC at 1:41 a.m. The battle damage assessment begins immediately. The strike group's intelligence team cross-references the Seahawk sensor logs, the surface warfare engagement data, and the radar tracks to build the final picture. By 2:30 a.m., the assessment is complete. 11 IRGC fast attack craft rendered inoperable in the engagement zone. 2 Peykaap-class missile boats accounted for, 4 C-802 missiles engaged with 3 confirmed intercepts and 1 partial. The Ford has sustained superficial hull damage above the waterline. The strike group's combat effectiveness is assessed as unimpaired. The cost of this engagement is calculated in the hours that follow. 31 Hellfire missiles expended, 3 SM-6 interceptors, 2 ESSM Block 2. Phalanx ammunition expenditure flagged for replenishment. The financial total runs to approximately $47 million in ordnance. Against that cost, the Iranian IRGC Navy's ability to execute a coordinated swarm attack against the strike group has been operationally degraded. The bases at Bandar Abbas and Qashm Island remain intact. The boats that sortied tonight will not sortie again. The boats, still in their pens, will factor tonight's outcome into whatever calculus their commanders apply to the question of whether to sortie tomorrow. What the battle damage assessment does not quantify, because no balance sheet accommodates it, is the operational intelligence value of what just happened. The IRGC's coordinated swarm attack was the result of months of planning and a doctrine built on years of wargaming. Tonight's engagement produced a dataset that every naval intelligence analyst in the coalition will spend weeks processing. The exact sequencing of IRGC sortie timing, the convergence geometry they used to synchronize a multi-base attack, the decision to hold the Peykaap missile boats back as a secondary strike element, the timing offset of the JASC departure. Each of those data points is a window into how the IRGC Navy thinks. It is also a window into how they will think differently the next time, if there is a next time at comparable scale. The analysts who process this data are building a model of Iranian naval decision-making that will inform every engagement doctrine review for the next decade. At 3 a.m., the Ford's crew begins the process of assessing and documenting the hull strike. The repair team that reaches the impact site carries torches and measuring tools and the focused professionalism of people who have been trained to repair things that should not have needed repairing. The gash in the outer hull plating is exactly 1.9 meters wide at its broadest point. The petty officer leading the repair team photographs it methodically from multiple angles before touching anything. Then she picks up a marker and writes the date and time in small, clean numbers on the hull plate beside the damage. Not for any official purpose, because she was there. By 4:15 a.m., the temporary repair is complete. The hull is watertight. The Ford continues its patrol. The Seahawk crews debrief in the squadron spaces as the sun begins to lighten the eastern horizon over the Iranian coast. The sensor operator from the lead aircraft reviews his thermal footage, frame by frame, writing his observations in the mission debrief form with the same systematic attention to detail that he applies to every mission, regardless of what happened in it. On the display, the Iranian fast attack craft appear as white shapes that become other shapes, then fragments, then cooling signatures. He notes each engagement time, each missed distance, each anomaly in the guidance chain. He does not editorialize. The footage will be studied by analysts and tacticians and planners for months. His job is to record it accurately. He records it accurately. Outside, the Persian Gulf reflects the first orange light of the morning in long, flat stripes. The water is calm again. The only evidence of what happened between 1:17 a.m. and 1:41 a.m. is in the radar logs, the engagement records, and the cooling wreckage distributed across 18 nautical miles of the Gulf's surface. The IRGC sent 25 vessels and 4 missiles against a carrier strike group in a coordinated assault built around a doctrine refined over decades. The doctrine assumed the swarm would reach its target. Tonight, the doctrine failed at the first contact. What the Iranian commanders sent across the water tonight was not simply boats and missiles. It was a test of whether their doctrine held against an adversary that had spent the same decades preparing the counter. The answer came back in 24 minutes, written in Hellfire strikes and SM-6 intercepts, and 1 partial warhead detonation that left a 2-meter scar on the hull of a ship that is still fully operational, still on station, and already preparing for tomorrow. Doctrine meets doctrine in the dark, and only one of them gets to revise its assumptions by morning. The Ford holds the line. The Gulf remembers the night. The revision begins at dawn.